Okay, thank you so much, everybody who's spoken so far, and I'll get through this because everybody must be starving now, so we want to get to our lunch break. Hi, I'm Tamara Polajnar, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of herEthical AI. Ruth, who is running this conference, is one of my co-founders. She's a research psychologist specializing in trauma, and she's worked on Ops Soteria Bluestone, and we met on a star-funded project where we developed practical guidelines for machine learning and AI algorithm use and development in policing. That's available on a website. We also have a third co-founder. You've met him, Tony, of the retired police force, DCP, a year and a half ago. And our mission is to use AI to help uncover and explain patterns of harmful behavior to help people understand coercive crimes. So a few years ago, if we wanted to build a system that can detect grooming or coercion in text messages, for example, we would need thousands and thousands of examples of conversations where these patterns occur and the ones in which they do not. And we would have to manually annotate each message and then use this to train a data model. And the models usually ended up relying on surface cues like word patterns and contextually nuanced linguistic phenomena were difficult to distinguish and limited to very unspecific concepts like sentiment. So what we have now are the large language models, which are surprisingly good at capturing context, although not perfect, and they often get the wrong end of the stick or, generalize a bit, as everybody's noticed. And they do favor themes that are common in their training data, which was like the data on the internet that's available for them to read. So what this means is that the models we're basing our technology now come with a lot of cultural and linguistic knowledge. And this means that we can now explain to the model what we're looking for instead of having to provide thousands and thousands of examples. So for complex tasks, this may involve this deconstructing a problem into component parts. And we have found observing how people work and how they perceive harmful language and behavior really enhances the ability to build systems that we're trying to build. And so contrary to some of the prominent opinions of the death of social sciences, we find that linguistics and psychology and sociology are very useful when working with AI. However, wonderful the LLMs are, and however excited people are about agents joining their own social network and building systems from a single prompt, we're still not at a point where we can trust chatbots to take over tasking in serious domains. So this is especially true for criminal justice, where much of the knowledge and data is specialized and and was not included in the language model training. I know this came up in the chat before that we need actually more specialized language models. We need more sovereign language models. We shouldn't be relying, like France is ditching all of their American models. And so we need to be, if we want safety in the future, we need to have more infrastructure built specifically for the tasks that we're trying to do. But we can still ameliorate some of this now through fine-tuning. But then we're back to needing lots of annotated training data to get a broad picture of a particular problem. And the annotated training data is expensive to gather. But if we break down the problems so that we can use non-AI solutions where needed and give the right amount of knowledge, external knowledge, where it's needed, and use trained and fine-tuned models for specific components, which do not necessarily have to be contextually flexible and won't change over time, we can really get some of that power back with control. And this also makes evaluation easier. We can look at all the atomic parts and we can track any errors that propagate through the system. We can also introduce checks and balances. For example, we can add rumination agents that can run in the background or run overnight and check all the information and decisions that were made during the day and highlight potential problems for human review. So we are using these guiding principles in the way we work, and we use them, and we kind of built out some of these principles while we were building our victim blaming detection system. We started with victim blaming language because it's something that doesn't occur in the training data that LLMs have online. So it's an understood concept, I guess, somewhat understood. I'll get to that. But there are no data sets online for people to train this project, to train this kind of task. So the LLMs would not have been explicitly trained on them. And so we started with types of victim blaming that were identified in research papers and produced a coding schema. Ruth was a big part of that. And we created agents that work together to detect victim blaming language. And we tested against annotations, which were done by Hazel Sayer, who's amazing, on publicly available court judgments. And we worked with Right to Equality on this project, I'd like to mention as well. We had the annotators work independently initially, so they would look through the document separately, looking at with the coding schema in mind. And then what we did was we took a certain amount of data and we had everybody annotate them separately, and then we went through them like example by example and built a consensus data set. What we found was observing people during this consensus meetings and during their annotations, but it was really hard for people to keep all the different types of victim blaming in mind, and the meaning of categories would drift over time. And the AI was more consistent with the literal meaning of these categories, although it would sometimes miss the broader contextual nuance of the implications of what was going on, especially some of the finer points of law, for example, when something had to be said, but it still sounds like victim blaming. We also found that people wanted a deeper understanding of a case, even going in with best intentions of identifying just the victim blaming language. They still wanted to know who was a victim, were they a real victim? The AI also didn't really care about that. Just anytime there was a possibility of somebody being a victim, the AI would annotate the language that sounded like victim blaming for further review. So this is not like a decision. It is like, this language looks like victim blaming. Do you agree in the context of this document or in this context of what you know about the case? But and that's a behavior we want, because we ultimately don't know who the real victims are. We don't know everything that happens to people. We just want to treat everybody with respect as much as possible. So while it's kind of good about stepping back, it does struggle with some of the social media contexts, for example, where victim blaming is wrapped in sarcasm. So it will still flag up what is actually victim blaming language, but humans have a higher tolerance to something that is wrapped in sarcasm. And overall, we found the average agreement of the annotators with the consensus data was similar to the accuracy of the model data set. So it's fundamentally a difficult problem that people have different opinions on, but it exists. This is now available as a web app, which allows upload of PDF documents and plain text, and it extracts and categorizes victim blaming and provides reasoning. We can also do streaming batch analysis on large document collections, and we believe that this is best placed inside public services as a victim service improvement tool and a proxy measure for quality of investigations, especially for the difficult to evidence crimes. By building VIDA, we learned that LLMs can work on the data that they were not necessarily trained on. And we learned how to make models work repeatedly over large amounts of data. VIDA can process a large document in less than 30 seconds. And I conducted this experiment where I gave it a big document and I gave ChatGPT a large document. And VIDA extracted over 50 examples of victim blaming. And I ran the same document through ChatGPT, and it took 10 minutes, and it got 6 or 7 most obvious examples. So while the raw LLMs have this concept, trying to turn something that, demonstrates the capability of understanding victim blaming into a victim blaming product and tool is still a large project. And this is where we have this thing where like a lot of people think, okay, LLMs can do it. We'll just build a prototype, but the actual step to building out a product is much bigger. So we're turning this knowledge now to improving investigation in coercive crimes, where victim blaming is a single event phenomenon. So victim blaming is, you could have one event of victim blaming in a large document and be like, okay, well, that is victim blaming. Coercion is a pattern of behavior over events, over time, spread across different mediums. So, we can only capture any part of that because obviously a lot of it can happen in person. We can only capture the bits that are visible in some sort of evidence, like chats or emails or communications of some kind. We're building a system for flagging behaviors. So we extract events and flag them with different coercive behaviors. And then we analyze the pattern of these behaviors. This can help people understand abuse and coercion are not a single event. We can link similar events in evidence across files or to witness statements, quickly providing an overview. And we can also summarize and export these findings along with the events highlighted and marked for quick review. So I have a little example here of a conversation. So case study. So this system is still in development, and we have some data to do with, for example, post-separation abuse. And what we've found it's quite good at finding lots of different interesting patterns. And some of this, will take a long time to unpick, and we have bigger data sets. We can do sort of meta-analysis, but this is just one case file. So in this case, it flagged up some flashpoints and triggers. So what we have here, it's you can see basically in December 22, in the run up to Christmas, just on a single day, just lots and lots and lots of different events indicating control to do with holiday arrangements and custody arrangements. But like more broadly, we don't necessarily always need the biggest amount of analysis to see some of these things. For example, in a lot of the cases that we looked at, we find that the perpetrator just takes up a lot of airspace. Control seems to take a lot of messaging, and so in this case, in this file, the perpetrator spends about 14 times as many or 15 times as many words talking to the target. The target has 1.8 thousand. We can also visualize the abuse across time, so the different events. This is post-separation abuse. It doesn't have as many categories. We have more categories of different types of abuse that can occur in a domestic relationship. But the post-separation abuse, it usually contains a smaller number of topics. But what we do see is that not all of the signals are in one direction. The perpetrator has volume of events, but also people, there's no such thing as a perfect victim. People are allowed to defend themselves. They're allowed to put up their own boundaries. And some of that translates into basically controlling events. And what we can do as well is we can have pattern analysis across all of these extracted events. So the summaries that we generate are based on the patterns and informed by knowledge about CCB. So where is this going? We're trying to build a suite of agents. For different types of tasks that will be really helpful in people to understand complexities of different types of cases, but also to keep the quality of the investigations high. So bias detection, different types of coercion, evidence linking, and then also quality assurance and basically evaluation of different steps and improving that whole ecosystem that requires to have a healthy agent. field of agents. But what we'd like to do is, obviously, we're building these kind of apps as well, but we would like to make these APIs available to other people to integrate into there, because not everybody wants to have a different app for every problem, and some of these things could be integrated into systems that people are already using in their work. Another case study is another case study of a coercive language application is authorized push payment fraud. It's a crime type where people are groomed online and tricked into believing they're in real relationships to basically get defrauded. And it's another crime type where it's difficult for people to empathize with. Most people think they would not fall for a scammer, but that person works really hard to convince you they're genuine, and they wear away your defenses over time. They coach you to subvert support systems and banks, not to report to people, not to tell your family. And it happens to like hundreds of thousands of people a year. So, and that's just in UK. So what we can do is we can use our APB fraud agent to provide early red flag checks, but also as a detector on the investigation platform, because, for example, this is a massively growing crime. It's really hard for police forces to put this information together, and so just being able to dump everything that somebody gives you into a single space and have it organize it for you, link it all up, highlight all the different grooming patterns and where the money asks are and how that links to bank statements, I think will be really helpful. So I think I'm under time, and I would like to thank you all, and please contact me if you want to have a chat, or the rest of the team. Well.